Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Semi-Professional Academic Podcast. As always, I am your host with the most Starbucks wrappers in my car, Jacob Watts. And joining me today is one of my absolute favorite people on the planet and my favorite McDonald's run partner, fellow Diet Coke aficionado, appreciator of all things iconic and bad bitch, while also simultaneously being my shared one brain cell partner, Maddie Foley. Maddie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to do this today because,
Yes, me too.
for those of you who don't know, Maddie and I went to undergrad together.
Yes.
And I've said this before, and Maddie literally got me through undergrad. That was some of the hardest shit ever.
Oh my gosh. It was rough. Literally, that for those of you that don't know, I am a year younger than Jacob. So my senior year, I was all on my own and literally almost did not graduate. It was so hard without him there. Didn't even graduate on time, but that's a story for another day.
But we graduated. We got the degree. We got the degree.
We did. I got it.
That's all that matters.
My mom got it professionally framed for me for Christmas.
Oh, I love that.
I don't know where to hang it. So it's just sitting propped up in my kitchen because I'm I don't know where to hang it.
Honestly, that's why I don't buy myself anything nice, because I never know where to put anything. And I'm always like, this corner looks good.
Me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But Maddie, in case you don't know, and for anyone who might be joining along for the first time, this podcast is just to dive into the lives, stories, heartbreaks, and triumphs of those either in academia or those who have left, and kind of dive into what academia was for them, and kind of destigmatize this cookie cutter image that we as academics sometimes feel like we have to fit. I hope you're ready to get into this because I'm very excited.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Awesome. And just to kind of dive into it immediately, Maddie, what motivated you to pursue college in the first place?
So it was mostly a drive because ever since I was little, I wanted to go to vet school. That is all I ever thought about wanting to do with my life, was be a veterinarian. When I was in middle school, shout out 4-H camp, I became a counselor at 4-H. I went as a camper, and one year they brought in goats and cows and a bunch of other stuff so that we could, we learned to milk the goats and we bottle fed the calves. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to do livestock, large animal veterinary. And so that, in combination with, shout out Mom, I know you're listening to this. And my dad and my stepdad, they were like, go to college, you got to do it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get my bachelor's degree in biology. And then I'm going to go to vet school and I'm going to be a large animal veterinarian. And now I'm not.
We'll get into this a little bit, but I really attest to that, kind of having that mindset of oh, I'm gonna do this and do this and do this and do this, and it just not like it. So for anyone who does not know, I initially went to undergrad with the intent to major in biology. So far, the only part of the story that stuck.
So real.
Yeah. Then go to medical school and become a surgeon. And now I did major in biology. That was true. And now I'm in my master's program. And yeah, by the time this comes out, I already have posted it. Yeah, and I will be attending my PhD program in the fall.
Whoop, big brain.
Um, yeah, we'll see. But so I know everyone's like kind of like not necessarily like I don't want to say like deviance because like this is just hard, but like can you walk us through like how like that alteration from like the path you started on like came to be?
Yeah. So, I initially, when I got to college, I was like, all of freshman year, it was, what do you want to do? I want to be a veterinarian. I picked an advisor who could help me get down that path, who had connections to the livestock and large animal world that could set me up for internships and set me up for success in that. And I was really driven to it. And, you know, a lot of people don't talk about how realistically some people are not built to go to school
Mm,
and specifically go to school and thrive in a college setting.
agreed.
Like, you'd be so proud of me. I actually wrote down the talking points I wanted to hit.
I'm
Um,
honestly so proud. Like,
but one of my big ones that I wanted to touch on is how the 4 years of college were the absolute worst my mental health has ever been.
mhm,
And the longer I was in school, the worse it got. By senior year, like I I did not want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to do anything because there was just this pressure from both the idea of my future and the idea of, you know, what it had to look like, what my school performance would had to look like, what my drive and my um success level had to be in order to achieve this goal that I had. And also because my whole life I'd been telling people that that's what I had wanted to do.
mhm,
And I felt like if I didn't achieve that, if I didn't, end up as a large animal vet,
mhm,
I felt like everybody in my life that I had been telling that this was my goal, this was my only plan, would see that I had failed.
mhm.
And it was a lot of that. And the summer between my junior and senior year, I actually ended up going out and getting a job at an animal hospital, just your small general practice dogs and cats animal hospital,
Mhm.
as a vet tech. And I started as a veterinary assistant. And then when I graduated, they bumped me up to a technician because I had learned so much and I could do all these things.
We love the
And
growth. We love the growth.
I realized that, like, I don't know that I could do that for the rest of my life. And, you know, I know that the veterinary community and the veterinary technician slash assistant community specifically, um, you know, there's this there's definitely a difference between like general practice and emergency and small animal and the environments working in each and the stress and the compassion fatigue that those different levels of practice face. But I would get home from work every day and I would just, especially so in the beginning, because I went in not knowing anything. And I got the job because one of the professors at undergrad,
Mhm.
his wife was a veterinarian at the practice. And it was like one of those things where I went and shadowed her. And then she was like, "What would you think about working here, like part time?" And then I went to full time when I graduated. And because I was learning everything brand new, I just felt like an idiot.
Hmm.
all the time, which is totally, totally like something normal in a sense
Yeah,
when you
totally.
start a new job and you don't really know what you're doing.
Hmm.
But it was like everybody was so stressed out and there was so much compassion fatigue in that setting that, and I know I'm guilty of it too, that you spend your whole day with these sick animals and these owners that are, you know, in some cases owners are great and they completely understand like you're there to help them.
Right, right.
But in some cases it's you get the, oh, you're gonna force me to, you know, keep my pet sick. You're not gonna make my pet better because I can't pay. I don't set the prices. I'm just here to take the blood and, stick stuff up your dog's butt. Like
Mhm. Yeah,
realistically.
yeah. And like that's just I mean, you know my thoughts on like our economy and everything, but like we really do live in a society where as a whole, and I'm not talking about like anybody like specifically, but we value in a capitalist society, people and livelihood is never the main focus. It's always about revenue.
Yeah.
And
And after being compassionate towards those people and those animals all day long, there's none left for
Mhm.
yourself or for everybody else.
Yeah,
So,
because you're
you know,
exhausted.
yeah. So I would come home and I'd be like, oh, I messed this up. Oh, I forgot this today. Whatever. I forgot to ask this owner this question. So I ended up having to go, like, the doctor was like, well, why didn't you ask that? Because they're emotionally exhausted. And then you get home and you're like, God, I'm stupid. Like, I'm incompetent because you have no compassion left for yourself.
Right.
And I don't know that I could do that every day. So there I was, 6 months post grad. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life anymore.
But but like I'm so glad like you bring that up though, because and like this is why I encourage everybody to shadow. Kind of like you did and like you got field
Oh, yeah.
experience. Because yes, the ideas of something can be absolutely great and sound like exactly what you want to do, but like the living that reality and I'm sure like you know this, but like getting faced with like the hard conversations, the less than like interview type days that are like less of the career days that you show up and talk
Yeah.
about it is so true. And like for anyone's listening that thinking about like going into graduate school, going into like a certain field, I beg you to follow like Maddie's example and either shadow or get a job in the field because to me, that's the truest way that you can get experience. And honestly, that's part of the reason why like I knew like I didn't want to go into medicine anymore was because I shadowed and I was just like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. And not to say like there are not people out there that would shadow and do what I did and still absolutely have the drive and the love and the passion for it.
Oh, of course.
But specifically with vet school,
Hmm.
I cannot speak to anything else because I did not explore any other paths. But in my personal opinion, vet school is something that if you're going to do it, it has to be something that you want the like as badly as I wanted it starting college. You have to want it that bad the whole time because you're going to go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt. And realistically, at least the vets that I spoke to at my small animal practice, like, you're going to be paying off, if you're somebody that takes loans, you're going to be paying those off the rest of your life. You're not going to be making, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, you're not going to be making crazy money. And, you may in some cases, depending on what you do. I haven't looked at cost and pay breakdown of every vet out there,
Right.
but, and so if it's something that you are unsure of and something that you're like in the boat like me, where if somebody walked up to my front door, knocked right now, and said, I'm here to offer you a full ride scholarship to, ready, set, go veterinary school. You
Mhm.
start tomorrow. Like, we will pay you to come to this school. You have a job waiting for you when you're done. I would pack a suitcase because I would love to be able to do that, but it's not something that I want badly enough to put myself through more schooling and all of that debt. And then, 15 years from now, hate my life because of that decision.
Right. Right.
Like, when I say the big focus I wanted to kind of touch on today, I reached out to Jacob after he had reached out to me and asked if I would come on the show. And I said, I really want to talk about the expectations of success and the expectations of achievement and that kind of fear of failure almost.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm someone like I have been working since I was old enough to work. I remember the first time I ever met your family, we were talking about jobs that we had had.
Right. Right.
And I remember I worked as a takeout waitress. I worked at a pizza place. I worked at a pet store. Um, I worked at in the mall. I worked as a nanny. Like I've done all this stuff. I worked at a coffee place. And your dad was like, how have you had so many jobs? Like, do you just job hop? And I was like, no. I was like, I always want to have a job
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I don't want to be sitting around. Like, if I want the power to say, like, oh, if I want to, buy this thing, like, I have income.
Right. Totally.
And so it's not like I have been a bum who's been sitting on the couch my whole life. Like,
Right.
I'm not the best student. I'll totally admit that.
I mean, who
Like,
is?
um, I'm not great at homework, but it got to a point my senior year where I was so afraid because I was taking all these upper level classes and I had, you know, 6 to 8+ hours of work every night.
Right.
I was so afraid of failing and so afraid that I was not going to live up to these expectations of success
Mm-hmm.
that I put myself on a 2-to-1 sleep schedule, which means I would stay awake for 48 straight hours and then sleep for 8 and then stay awake for another 48 straight hours. And I lived like this for probably 3 months.
Yeah. Which, if everyone's listening, this is not advice. Don't do that.
No, please, I am begging you not to do this because I was a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And
it got to a point where I had to have other people drive me to like the store and stuff when I needed to go because I didn't trust myself behind the wheel of a car.
yeah, and like I know like I had graduated at this point, but like I would like come back every now and then and see you, and you could just tell that you were not okay.
Yeah.
And I, I say this as if like I did, and I don't like mean to like hijack this by any means,
Oh
but
no.
I was on a very like similar schedule because, and I feel like, and I'm not dismissing anyone, like this is just our experiences, so I think I can speak to this a little bit better. Like being a pre-vet and pre-med student who also like who we both worked, like both talked about it, like in undergrad, the minimum number of jobs that the two of us had combined at one time was 5.
Yeah.
And so, and we were both biology majors, so we were in these upper level bio courses. We had these labs that were like 2, 3, 4 hours long.
Yeah, and we were both research students, so we were both doing additional research.
Which we did not get class credit for by any means. So
No,
so we were going out of our way to do this, working. We were both in Greek life.
yeah. And
And,
it got to a point where I got in trouble with the school because I would go because I was so afraid that if I let myself stay in my dorm room, that I would sleep. Like I literally couldn't trust myself to be near a bed.
mhm.
So for the last 3 months of my senior year, I lived in my sorority's, like, we had this room called like the lounge, and it was essentially like three couches and a TV that like you could go and study in. I lived in that room essentially. Like I lived in the lab, and I actually got in trouble with the school because one day one of the security guards caught me in the lab at like 4 in the morning, and they were like, "You can't be in here till 6." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I was just studying and I didn't realize how late it had gotten." Like, because he thought I had just gotten there. And
Mhm.
he was like, "The lab closes at midnight. Like, have you been here all night?" And I was like, um, because I was scared if I went back to my dorm, I would sleep. And I was like,
No,
I can't sleep. I have too much to do.
no, for real. And like, but that like mentality is so true. And like, I remember there would be so many nights where, especially my senior year, I was working on this like chorus frog identification, like with the stage and like recording like how long they were for this project that I was doing for like
Yes,
research.
I remember that.
And I literally, and I want you all to know, like, this was like a very almost like cubicle sized room. Like, Maddie, like, do you like you were there, you've seen it. Do you agree with that
Yes.
description?
And it was freezing.
See, that's the thing though. Like, it was either freezing or it was blazing hot.
See, you were in like the little area. My research was in the cooler next to it.
Yeah.
So I
So,
was in the cooler room.
yeah. So I had to sit at this desk, like turn on a microscope, and keep in mind, like the two areas like were chilled. So like the exhaust, not exhaust, but like the like heat from like what was keeping them cool was like flowing into me, and the door was locked and like probably like 6 by 6 space.
Yeah,
And so there'd be times where like I would literally walk out of the room and feel like 20 degrees cooler because with the lights that I was on and like all this stuff. And it got to the point where like I was so delirious, and I would go in there at like not 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I would leave at like 5:30 in the morning. And,
literally.
and this went on for like I think a month and a half. And by the end of it, I looked exhausted because like that like mentality you said, I was like, I can't sleep. I have too much to do.
Literally. It like it got to a point where the lab, like I literally my professor like cleared out a drawer, and I literally kept a blanket, a throw pillow, some like a sweatshirt in there in case it got chilly. At one point, she pulled a bench in there because she knew that I had been staying in there like all night. And she was like, "In case you want to lay down, here's a bench." And I was like, "Thanks."
Which is sweet, but like I like kind of want to ask your opinion on this, Maddie. Like, do you feel like in academia right now, like that kind of like unhealthy habits? Because let's be real here, we were not healthy when we were like literally like, okay, I'll do all
Oh,
this and then I'll reward myself with 2 hours of sleep, maybe.
yeah.
But like, do you feel like that kind of like extreme unhealthy behavior is discouraged or almost slightly encouraged in academia?
Honestly, I think it's expected. Like,
Hmm.
realistically, like, it is insane how another point I wrote down is like your social battery in college is almost always dead because if you think about it in the sense of, let's say you have an 8 a.m. class.
Gross.
Let's say, I'll use my senior year schedule as an example.
All right.
I am somebody that I liked to stack my classes because
Same.
I personally, I have really bad ADHD. I take medication for it. So I wanted to get all of my classes done while the effects of my medication were at their strongest. And so I would stack my classes. So I went from 8 a.m. straight through to 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get done at 2:30. I would go, and then I would go home. And let's say I took 4 classes. 4 classes is fully loaded, or 5?
4.
4. So I had 4 classes. So let's say I had 2 hours of homework for each class, which is realistic.
Yeah.
That's 8 hours of homework. So if I went back to my dorm and immediately started working at my homework at 2:30, that means I would be done with my homework at 8:30. Well, if you factor in,
Well, that'd be 10:30.
or 10:30, my bad.
No, it's good. I was just highlighting. I'd be like, that doesn't seem like too much, but then I was like, no, like
I didn't do well in math.
neither did I.
If you factor in, you have to eat.
Yeah, because you should eat, everybody.
Personal hygiene. If I had to take a shower, do laundry. Let's say I needed to do some research. It was expected to put around 4 hours a day into research. So if it's 10:30 and you do your 4 hours into research, that's 12:30. We'll say
no, that's 2:30. Because remember we're getting done at 10:30, and then
that's 2:30 in the morning. Let's say 30 minutes to take a meal break. That's 3 a.m. Let's say an hour for personal hygiene. That's showering, bathroom breaks, except doing laundry if needed,
brushing your teeth.
How long to say? An hour?
Yeah.
That's 4 a.m. So and let's say you have to be up by 7 to get ready and go to get to your 8 a.m. class on time. Eat breakfast, get coffee, whatever. That gives you 3 hours a night to sleep.
Yeah. And that's not including any social interaction. That's not including any fun activities.
Yeah. And add on top of this, so you have to do all of these things. Add on top of this the projects. So you have your normal standardized homework, but then you also have to think, you have projects that are due, midway through the semester that you need to work on. You have to meet with study groups. You have to, if you're in any clubs or you have a job, you have to work. Or you have to go and have a meeting with your club. Or if you have an exam, you have to study. So hence why I put myself on this 2-to-1 schedule. And the disclaimer, do not do this. For the love of God, do not do this.
Yeah, this is not an advice portion of how to do it. It's an advice not to do it.
No, it got to a point where I was rationing my ADHD medication because in order to achieve this schedule and have the focusing abilities to make this schedule successful, air quotes, successful, it was not good for anybody involved.
No.
I would literally ration out my medication where I would take it and then I would literally set a timer because it lasts 12 hours. I would set a timer for 12 hours so I could take it again so I could stay up. Then I would like half it and take half so I could stay up and then sleep. And when I would wake up, I would take the other half and then I would do it again. So I was taking 2.5 and then sleeping and then 2.5. Like, it was awful.
Mhm. And like just that kind of like schedule where you having to use like this medication that essentially allows you to function
Yeah.
and like rationing and be like, okay, like I'm not gonna like take it exactly how as it says because I'm so overworked and like I'm so behind on everything that I'm just going to take this and then that way like I can sleep for like a couple hours here and there to get stuff done. And that's just absolutely insane. Like and like not
Yes.
and like I think a lot of people don't understand is like the way that like this kind of like exploitation of students and work is what's leading to all this burnout that we're seeing because people are not given the time to take care of themselves. They're not given time to rest, to enjoy life, that they become so burnt out. And I feel like that's why we see a lot of people like dropping out and leaving academia.
Yeah. And the driving force behind all of that is this fear that I would be seen as a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Because fun fact, on my dad's side, I'm a first generation college student.
Mm-hmm.
My, on my mom's side, like my mom went to college, my grandparents went to college, my stepdad went to college, but my dad, I was the first Foley to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of pressure, like not necessarily from my dad. Like, obviously, he wanted me to do well,
Right.
but there was a lot of internal pressure that I had to succeed and I had to go and be, amazing because I was the first one and I'm the oldest sibling. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had to set a good example for my siblings by doing really well in school and achieving all of these things. And there's this feeling of, and this does not apply only to first generation students because college and the academic world as a whole has changed drastically since
Mm-hmm.
my mom was in school.
Oh yeah.
But I am the first one to go and be a science major.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a funny story, my mom actually went to college to be a physical therapist
Yeah.
and she did an internship and she she was doing a dressing change in a steam room for somebody that had I think one of their toes amputated or something.
Oh.
And when she took the bandages off and the smell with the steam, she literally blacked out.
Ew.
Sorry to expose you, mom. um but she ended up changing her major to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the first person in my family to go as a science major, and there's all of this pressure, and I was like pushing myself so hard. It creates this feeling of isolation
Yeah.
where you feel like you can't say, like, I'm struggling, I need help, I can't do this. Because when you do, you get, oh well, just take a break, just take a step back. I can't.
Uh-huh.
i
Yeah.
don't i don't have time. I will never forget one of my favorite moments from undergrad
Oh.
was my dad. He would always call me after an exam to be
Mm-hmm.
like, how did you do, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would tell him, I'd be like, oh, I think I did really well, oh, I don't think I did great, oh, it was really hard, whatever. And so then a couple days later he'd be like, hey, how'd you do, to find out my grade. And I would tell him. And I remember I was in organic chemistry
Ugh.
and oh um what was the other, development, not development,
Developmental.
um not developmental, it was biodiversity. I was taking biodiversity and organic chemistry at the same time.
Wait, no, because I was too. We were
Yep.
not having a good time.
No. And one and I went home for winter break, and they asked me like how I had done on the exam that I had right before winter break. And I was like, biodiversity, I did okay. I think I got like a B minus or something. But organic, I had like barely scraped by with a D. Like it was rough. And my dad was like, you just need to study more. All this stuff, telling me all this crap. And I was like, you know what? And I whipped out the practice exams for both of those classes.
Ooh.
And I was like, I gave my dad the textbooks and my notebooks. And I was like, go ahead and answer these questions. I was like, open book, open notebook. I was like, you can even Google it if you want. I was like, go for it. Have a good time.
Yep.
He didn't even know where to start. I did the same thing to my mom, same thing. And after that, when I would like call them and tell my exam scores, they were a lot more like, you'll get them next time. Like
Yeah.
they understood like the level of not the difficulty of the content I was learning and having to keep up with. They were like, that's a lot.
Yeah. And I kind of went through the same thing with like my parents because like I grew up um like high school like it came really easy to me and I was valedictorian and I was getting like if I got a 95 it was a bad day for me. And then like I come to college and for those of you who don't know, this was a very intensive program, I would say the least. Wouldn't you agree, Maddie?
Oh yeah.
And so like I would be studying for like weeks at a time and get like a B and I'd feel great. And at first like my parents like didn't really get that. But then like once I walked them through the content, they became a lot more understanding. So like
Oh.
I think just kind of reevaluating and not leaning into those expectations is going to do great. But on that note, let's take a little break. And we are back. Maddie, there was something that I like was kind of racking my brain over because like we talked about how we both kind of felt like those expectations just exceed on us and we kind of were going through it a lot. So like we kind of relied on each other a lot to get through everything.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, like, do you like even remember like how we came so close together?
Honestly, I could not even tell you. Like, I know we have a mutual friend, Cole,
Which Cole, if you're
and
listening, we love you.
love you, Cole. Um, we had a class together my freshman year. I'm sorry. I have to apologize. One sec. Beedle! Shut up! Beedle! Come here. Sorry to yell at my dog. He's barking at somebody walking past the window. I had a class with him my freshman year, and you all were in the same fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
And he like I went over there one night because he was like, oh, you should come over. Like, we're having like a little party thing. And I was like, okay. And so I like went over there and I was like, me and some friends went over because he invited like a little group of us. And I met you. And then the next time I saw you, you were like, oh my God, hey. And I was like, hey. And then we were best friends. Like, that was it. I met you one time and we had like a 5-minute conversation. And then next time I saw you, we were best friends. And I was like, I'm down.
I swear.
Like, there was no questions asked, no, like, because I remember racking my brain because somebody asked me at one point, like, oh, how do you know Jacob? And I was like, I just do.
No, it's so funny to me because because I like to kind of like flesh out like everybody that I bring on here and kind of think about like how we met and I'm just kind of like like I just like if someone would have told me that like we just got assigned together and like that was like how it went, I would have believed it because like
Oh, 100%.
eh,
Like, I I think it was just one of those things where we met and the universe was like, all right, you're good. And we were both like, cool, sounds good.
literally. And I think like this, I think like our friendship, like obviously like is one of my favorites like ever. But I think it just like attests to the thing that like you like this is going to be hard no matter what you do. Don't make it harder on yourself by like starving yourself of sleep or like self-love like the two of
Yeah,
us have done, learn from our mistakes, but also at the same time really rely on like your people. And like I know that during my undergrad career, like I relied on Maddie a lot. I relied on like other friends and but like just find like your tribe of people that like you're going through it because like this is gonna suck no matter what. Like and I think I related a lot to like that trend on TikTok where it's just like no one emptied the water when I was drowning, but this bitch hopped in and said, "Let's play mermaids." Like
literally.
and just yeah, like this is gonna be hard no matter like to what degree, but like find people that like ease the suffering and like makes it like a little bit worthwhile. Like that's my
Literally.
advice.
Like, there were some days that the only reason I like ate or left my cave was because you texted me and you were like, I want to go to McDonald's and I don't want to go alone.
Literally.
And I would be like, we had it down to a system where we would literally take turns paying and driving.
hmm
So like we would text one of us would text each other and we would be like, whose turn is it? Like,
For two people who don't really track anything, we had this down like
oh,
to a scientific formula. Like
100%. It's bad because to this day I cannot eat a McDonald's McChicken because it doesn't taste right. Like,
oh.
because it's not with you in the parking lot of our school. Like, it
as we
just
talk
doesn't taste right anymore.
as we talk some mad shit.
Literally.
Yeah. No, I remember one time, Maddie and I were in can I name the class or do you think
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I did.
Oh yeah. So we were in this animal behavior class. And let's just say it was a time.
It was, in fact, a time.
And part of this class was you had to uh come up like do these experiments and then write papers on them.
Gosh, is this a story I think it is?
I think so. I think so. So we start off with these minnows.
God.
Is this the story you were thinking I was gonna tell?
Yes.
Okay. So um we had them in this tank and we covered like newspaper like on the side of it so they can't see out of like their tank. And we were only supposed to have one and we were assessing like if they can detect predator cues, which this was so weird because we literally had like one of those like mounted plastic fish that we were using as like the predator. And then like I think a bird as well to see if it could tell the difference.
Something like that.
Uh, kooky, kooky to say
It
the
was
least.
odd. For context, the way this was set up was we had these like tiny 2-gallon tanks, and
Okay.
you ran your experiment. You like put your minnow in the tank and you ran your experiment for like, it was like what, 10 minutes or something?
Yeah, I think it
You
was
like
10.
tracked it,
Yeah.
and then you would go and you would take your minnow out with a net and put it into like the used bucket.
hmm
You would dump the entire tank out like into the sink or whatever, and then you would fill it back up from like the filtered water or whatever, get a new minnow out of the unused bucket with a net and put it in.
Yeah. So like
For context.
yeah, so for context. So like Maddie gets done with like I think her second trial and things go fine. And like she dumps it out. She actually spills some rock into the sink, like the substrate. And so then she fills it back up with water, grabs, and keep in mind like these nets were so tiny. Like the minnow
Yes.
barely fit in the
They
net.
were like little zebra fish, zebra danios,
Yeah.
if you know what those are. If you don't, Google it.
Yeah. And so she puts them in there, and then the professor comes around and it's like, why do you have two minnows in here? And Maddie swears up and down that there's only one in there. And then we come around to see, and there are actually two minnows in this thing. How? We don't know. Because again, these nets are so tiny that one barely fit in there.
I stand by my theory.
Yeah, which is
The spontaneous minnow duplication theory. I think, I don't know how, but there was like a glitch in the matrix or something. But my minnow, that was one, the professor spoke it into existence. He said, there are two in there. And I was like, no, they're not. And lo and behold, there were two.
yeah. And what was so funny to me was this professor was like going on, and like he had a tendency to be a little dramatic and
Literally.
be over there. And like I don't know what happened, but Maddie had just had it. And and she goes like, you know what? If you had anything besides the audacity, I would love to hear it. And I think about that to this day because it was just so the whole class was so gooped, so gagged. Because like, don't get me wrong, like me and Maddie, like especially that class, like my senior year, I was already in grad school at this point, so like I was kind of like, fuck it, we ball. Um, but I like we we were not afraid to like give it back.
No, because what got me is I was so confused. Like, I just didn't understand because literally the entire thing was you take the minnow out,
Mhm.
you literally pour the tank out. So it's
Yeah.
not like I could have just like like missed the minnow. Like the tank's empty,
Yeah.
okay, when you dump it.
Yeah, and
And
you even
like
spilled some rock in there. So like you would
literally,
have like seen the minnow.
literally. So or like and if I had I have no idea. And these like nets, they were like 1 inch by 1 inch.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Like
these fish were like 3/4 inches long.
yeah, so like barely
And
fit in the net.
there was like exactly enough in like the little tank or like close to exactly enough. Like there was like two fish left in the tank when all of us were done. And it was a small class. Like there was
Yeah.
only 15 people in the class.
Hmm.
So it's not like I had scooped up two minnows because I would have seen that I had two in my net, and B, it's small tank because the crazy thing is he noticed that I had two minnows like 8 minutes. So it's not like it was like right away. Like how did I get 8 minutes into the trial without noticing a second one? So I'm like, this is literally the only explanation. I'm so confused. Like, what happened? And the professor is like, well, now you're just being ridiculous. Ridiculous. You probably just grabbed two. He was like, now, if you spend as much time, focusing on what you were doing, that maybe you wouldn't have put two minnows in the tank. And I was like, I didn't. Uh,
I just yeah. I that
the audacity,
yeah, that semester was so fun because this professor like
the
had a
gall of that man.
say this, but that's all the time we have for today. But don't worry, we'll continue this conversation next week in part 2. So, good night, everyone. Make good choices. Have a good night. And always remember. Damn, I really thought I had something with that. Anyways, bye.